today's session on the testing track. And today's session is going to be more with respect to the technical questions that might be asked as part of a testing profile interview. Okay. So before getting started, we'll just take a quick 1 minute intro and try to understand about the Women Who Code platform, and then we'll move on to today's session. Okay. So Women Who Code is a worldwide organization that is spread across all over the world, and it has got a number of branches. And the primary objective or purpose of Women Who Code is all about supporting women to excel in their respective career technology. Okay, so it's all about like supporting the women to excel in the technology careers. So when it comes to the mission, this is all about the mission. And quickly moving on to the vision, it's about a world where diverse women are better represented as engineers and tech leaders. Quickly moving on to the code of conduct. Women Who Code is all about equality. It doesn't really want it to discriminate anyone, any participant based on their gender, ability, physical appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, socioeconomic status, or whatnot. So it stands out for equality and tries to provide equal opportunity to each one of us so that like we can make progress in our respective career profiles. So for the detailed code of conduct, we request all the participants to go through the below link that is being shared in the PPT. And we request all the participants to adhere to the code of conduct while any kind of activity is being done through this particular platform. Quickly moving on to the Women Who Code Hyderabad chapter. So as I said, like Women Who Code is spread across the world, and whatever the current training programs which are being labeled as RISE training programs, the objective of this program is to support the women who are currently on career break to help them in returning to the mainstream workforce. And as part of that, we were hosting trainings on 3 tracks. One is testing, followed by Java and Hadoop. So today's session is more related to the testing, and especially with respect to whatever the different kinds of technical questions that may come up as part of a technical round of the interview. So in order to host this session today, we have a wonderful trainer, Raghavendra Swami. So let me quickly introduce Raghav. Raghavendra Swami is having 17 years of IT experience, and he is very much passionate about knowledge sharing, and at the same time doing different kinds of events and activities supporting the volunteer events. And Raghav is like a pure testing professional. He has got an opportunity to work on different tools and technologies related to the testing, namely like UFT, Selenium, Tosca, whatnot. So his complete profile is into the testing, and as part of his day-to-day responsibilities, he leads the testing teams in delivering the projects related to the testing. And he is very passionate, and he has hosted a number of sessions related to the testing, and he is very good in delivering the sessions and also like hosting the interview sessions with respect to covering whatever the different kinds of questions that might be asked in the interviews. So we are very much glad to welcome Raghav to host these sessions for us today. And prior to that, I would like to thank Raghav for taking out time and helping us on hosting this session for the participants. Thank you, Raghav, for your time and support. With that, I would like to hand over the control to Raghav to take it forward for today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari. Thank you so much for my introduction. Hi, all. Good morning. This is Raghav. So before we get into the session, so basically, whenever we go to the whenever we attend any interviews, first in interviewer expect that we should be strong enough on basic concepts. So we should be good with the basic concepts. If the interviewer asks about any concepts, any topic related concepts, any questions related to the any topic of the software functional testing or the manual testing or the automation testing, whichever the tool which you have selected or whichever tool which you have knowledge. So first of all, they expect the answers for the basic questions. We should be good enough and we should be good thorough of all the concepts of the basic level knowledge. So if we are trying to answer wrongly in a basic level questions also, it will give you the basically generally the people used to say, right, the first impression is the best impression. So generally initially the interviewer will start with asking a very basic level question. In the basic level question itself you could not able to answer properly, so it will give it will put that impression into that interviewer. So it will give a wrong impression to that interviewer that you are not well versed with the very basic level concepts. So I would suggest, first of all, you should well versed with all the basic concepts which when you before and go and attend any interview. That is the that I observed from many of the interviews candidates who attend that interview. So while taking the interviews, many times I've seen that. So my suggestion would like, first before you attend any interview, you first to just brush up one or two times that basic level concepts, so that it will boost your confidence, and also you will have a like lot of confidence while answering the any questions related to the interview questions. So in as part of today's session, so we will discuss like what are the questions we might get related to the manual testing. What are the questions, what kind of questions we'll get related to the agile methodology, and what are the interview questions we will get related to the SQL queries like a database related. And also we'll also talk about that Tosca related questions and Selenium related questions during today's session. So when we start with the functional or the manual testing related questions, generally in any of the interview, most 90% of the interviewers will ask the question of, can you explain the defect life cycle in your current organization or a project which you are following? So generally whenever so what is the defect? First of all, defect is any deviation from the requirement. If you see any deviation from the requirement or like any deviation from the expected results, that we call as any defect or bug, or the depend like, so the different terminologies it used in the different organization in realistic or real-time manner. So basically if you see any deviation from the expected results, so that we will raise as a defect. Either there are a lot of defect management tools which we use, like we use a ALM, we use a Jira, and we also use a Bugzilla. Like there are many defect management tools are there, and Qtest, and also even Tosca. Also in the Tosca itself also we can use as a defect management tool. So wherever, in whichever the defect management tool, so the general the defect workflow will be like when you raise a defect, so the initial state will be the so even while explaining the while you giving the answer about any question also, you should specify like in a realistic manner. Like, so generally what are the process which we follow when we raise the defect? Then when we submit or create a new defect, so generally it will be the initially the new state. Once the new defect is raised, it will be the new state. Once you once you assign the defect to the respective teams, like either you assign to the maybe a release team or it depends, like some organizations will have a separate release team or build team. So first we will assign the defect to that team, so that team will cross check or check that defect. If it is a valid defect, then they will assign to the development team, or some teams they directly assign to the development team. So once the assign that defect to the development team, that the defect will be changed as the open status. Okay, so once the development team started, if the defect is as per the it's a valid defect, so they change the open defect. Okay, and they will assign to the development team. And if it is not a valid defect, simply the release team or the development team will reject the defect, and they will update with the rejected status. And if it is a valid defect, and it will change to the, like the development team will work on the defect and they will change the necessary code changes in the respective build. Okay, so they complete the code change and they deploy that code into the dev environment. First, basically the environments will be like, first they develop the code, they deploy the code into the dev environment. They first test, they will do the unit testing kind of thing in their dev environment. Once that testing is done, so once the development and testing is done in that dev environment, so they will change that defect status to the fixed. Okay, so either it can be, once they change to the fixed, if they are able to fix that in the same release, they used to make a fixed status. Okay, once they fix that defect. Okay, when they started working on the defect, once the defect fixes happen, and once the defect is the changes is happened to that particular build in the dev environment, they will change the status to the fixed. If they could not able to deliver or change that is in the current release, if they are going to do it in the future release, they will change to the defect to the deferred defect. Deferred defect is nothing but, so they will not fix that defect in the current release, they are going to do it in the future release, in the maybe next release or next release. Like, so again, it depends, it will take a decision called by the business. Okay, so once the change to the fix, once once they push the code from the dev environment to the QA environment, then they will change the defect to the retest. The testing team will retest the defect. If it is working as expected, then they will close the defect. If it is not, again, if you are fixing the same issue, we will reopen the defect. So this is the life cycle which we need to explain when an interviewer asks about the defect life cycle. And we also get like questions like what is the difference between the regression testing and retesting? So basically, regression testing is to make sure that any code changes should not have any side effects on the existing functionality due to the changes. Either it can be due to changes with the functionality change, or due to functionality change, like due to the enhancement changes, or due to the defect fixes. So we make sure that there won't be any impact, or there won't be any impact, or there won't be any side effects on the existing functionalities due to that changes in the enhancement changes or defect fixes. That is a regression testing. So retesting, basically the retesting is a kind of a retest or the re-execute the failed test case. Basically the retesting is related to the defect testing, and when we raise the defects that particular test case is failed, so then we link that defect to the particular test case, and once the defect is fixed, we will do the retesting of the defect. So we will re-execute that particular test case. We will execute that particular test case and that particular scenario after the defect fix. That is a retesting. And so that is a major difference between the regression testing and retesting. And what is the difference between the smoke and sanity testing? We also might get this kind of a question. Many of the interviews will ask during our interview sessions, for many sessions during the interviews. And what is the difference between the smoke and sanity testing? So basically, smoke testing is to test the basic functionality of an application. So like it's a very high level, very high and very high level testing. This is the first. So whenever generally a build deploy happens, the first test which is going to happen is the smoke testing. So basically, smoke is nothing but just to certify the build. The build is good to go with the continue with the testing activity. So like a very basic level functionality of the testing which we do with using the smoke testing. So generally developers deploy the build into that. So generally in the smoke test will be done within 20 minutes or an half an hour. So that test will be executed against the new build. If we are not seeing any issues, then we will certify that build is ready to test, ready and continue with the testing activity. That's mainly we use for the smoke testing to certify a build. The build is ready to go with in the current environment, ready to go with the further activities, like a further testing activities. So in the smoke test itself, it fails. Then the development team will fix that changes and issues, and they will push the again updated, rebuild it, and then again they will push the code into the in this environment. And the sanity testing, basically the sanity testing is to test the core functionality of your application. Like, so it is a kind of a regression testing, but it's not a regression. Once we're done with the testing of everything, so before we hand over to the hand over or providing the sign up to the customer, or providing the sign up to the respective teams or the development teams, so we do the part of the regression with very core functionalities. We just test that still we are having any issue, or to make sure that the testing completed activity and the existing build and the existing release application, release related application code have a consistent and good enough to push the code to the production. So generally after actual regression testing, we just do the sanity testing, like to make sure that after making a lot of defect fixes and defect retesting and all the things, a lot of code changes, a lot of code refactoring which is happening during the defect fixes and all the things. So to make sure that everything is fine before push the code back, before the push the code from the QA environment to the production environment. So, and we also get the question related like that, what is the test bed? So test bed is in a kind of a test environment. It consists of the specific software and hardware and operating system, and also the product under test, the application, and other softwares and other applications which is I'm sorry.
Sure, no problem, Raghav. And I request the participants also to be interactive and engaging. So feel free to like interrupt Raghav and shoot out any additional clarification or additional information which you think like you need. Everyone, I request each one of you to be interactive. Okay.
Yeah, I think that could be even helpful. Thank you. Thank you. So,
I have a doubt.
Yeah. Yes, Sweta.
Yeah, in the defect like I feel that theoretically I know it, but in the real time, how the communication between the developer and the tester will be?
So generally, whenever you change the any status in a defect lifecycle management, like in a defect tool, an email will be triggered to the respective stakeholders. Whoever raised the defect, whoever the work on the developer, like whenever if you change the status from the new to open, you will get an intimation email through the to your email ID. So there is a email ID. So when you get access to that your email ID and all the things will be configured with that respect to life defect management tool. So automatically the tool will trigger an intimation, an email to the all the stakeholders. Whoever involved in that particular defect, it will be intimated. Like when you open the defect, you will get an email. When you change to the open status, and like when you assign the to the defect like developer, so it will trigger an email for each and every event which is associated with that particular defect.
Okay. Normally,
so there won't.
Here,
Yeah, go ahead.
What is meant by ticket raising? Sometimes we hear this terminology.
Ticket is generally basically we observe like a ticket is if any issues which we are having with the production code. So if we are there are some issues which reported by the customers, those kind of fixes, right? Those kind of defects or those kind of issues in production environment, generally we raise the ticket like production ticket. Any code fixes which required in the production code base, so generally we raise the tickets. Otherwise, in terms of the QA test, QA environment, we talk all in terms of the defects, defect or bug. We represent that, but only tickets, right? We used to call the incident or the tickets that are related to the prod code. Like if we any customers kind of a products or in kind of a projects also. So the whoever the customer related, so they might have reported any issues, right? To accommodate those issues, and the development team or the respective teams will raise the concerned team will raise that incident ticket, production incident ticket or production ticket. So corresponding development team will fix those issues in that, or they will make a hot fixes kind of thing. They will raise a, so it is everything. It's a process oriented. Again, we need to raise a Jira ticket for the respective thing and production ticket, and associate that first. They need to raise the Jira ticket in the dev environment, or they will pull the code back into the dev environment. First, they will test it, because directly no developer will fix the code into the production. First, they will pull the same production code into the dev. They will test it, and if it is working fine in that, then only they will push the code directly into the production.
Clear.
Okay.
Yeah, it's clear.
Any other questions? Anyone has any questions? So like it is it should be interactive, because even it will, if you have any questions, you can ask that. It's a feel free to ask, so that it will help you and as well and others as well. So even others also have a same kind of a question in their mind, so it will be clarified to them as well. So generally, I also would recommend to have an interactive session. So, okay, for the interest of time, if you don't have a question, I'll just continue with another set of questions. And okay, so generally we will, we are working as a software tester, or so generally we get the phases of the software testing life cycle. So generally the software testing life cycle, it starts again with the requirement analysis and test planning, test case design and development, and test environment setup, test execution, and the defect reporting, and the test closure. So this is a STLC life cycle phases. And we might get also similar question like, what is the difference between the priority and severity? So the defect severity, it is with respect to the impact on the functionality as in as severity, and the priority is it is with respect to the impact on the business. So when we when we talk about the priority, it is related to the impact on the business, and when we talk about the severity, it is related to the impact with respect to the impact on the functionality. So we see this kind of a question, and also can you tell me one high priority and high severity defect example? So generally, if you say that high priority and high severity defect, so when a website is being tested in a Chrome browser, it works perfectly. But when we switch to the Firefox or any other browser, the pricing page shows in a major flaws, like if the buttons are getting disappear, like so while it is in a portal kind of thing. So when I try to buy when I click on a buy button, so it will that buy button itself, it is getting disappearing in the other browser. So that we can consider the high priority and high severity defect, because if the user is not able to see the buy button itself, so it is a major flaw in that application. So that can be considered as a high priority and severity defect. And also you also might have get a question like a low severity and low priority and low severity and high priority defect. So when if you see that in a company logo is with the wrong spelling, which is displaying in application or the product, so but that is not impacted with the functionality. So that's where it's a low severity, because the severity is impact on the functionality, whereas the priority has impact on the business. So the company logo is displaying with the spelling mistake, but so in terms of the application functionality or the product functionality, there is no impact in the functionality. So that is in a very low severity. Where it comes to the business, it impacts the company branding. So the company branding will impact in the market. So that is in a business impact, which is in a high priority of the defect. So what are the test case design techniques? Generally, in the there are many test case design techniques. We have we use a boundary value analysis, equivalence partitioning, and decision table, and state transition diagrams, and use case testing. So these are the different test case design techniques which we use. And basically, boundary value analysis is kind of a So for a given for given inputs, right? So we'll take a we will take a we will apply this BBA and equivalence partitioning, and for input ranges we will split that into the range between the for the ranges we'll apply the equivalence partitioning, and for each of the class we will apply the boundary value analysis. Like we'll take one value outside the boundary and inside the boundary, and the on a boundary value. So this we will apply, and we will apply this to design the test cases. And what is the difference between the test strategy and test plan? And a test strategy, it says the general standards and policies, and general standards and practices about the testing activities. And test plan is and other, like it defines the specific details of the QA responsibility and process that will be described there. And what are the 5 most common problems in a software development? So like we might very rarely this kind of question we'll get, but in some interviews we'll ask this kind of question, like poor requirements, unrealistic schedule, inadequate testing, future lot of features to be scheduled to deploy in a particular few release, and miscommunication. And also the tomorrow is a release. You are the only one resource to test, and if you have to complete the testing, how do you manage and how do you test? So if interviewer might have asked this kind of question, you need to say that we have to prioritize the test cases, like high priority, medium priority, low priority test cases. First, we will execute the high priority test cases. Then we will once we complete with the high priority test case, so then we will pick up the medium priority test case and we will test it. And if still the time is available, so then we'll go and test with the low priority. This is the answer which you have to answer if anyone asks this kind of questions, like if there is a release and you are the only one tester, you have to test the then how do you manage all the things and like. So basically in a real-time fashion, so we will also prioritize the test cases like high and medium low. So accordingly we will test the we will execute those test cases based on the priority wise. So generally we do the smoke testing. All smoke related test cases will be the high priority test cases. In a regression, we will split the all the into 3 categories, like high, medium, low. And so accordingly we will pick up those test cases and we'll execute that. And okay, so what is the difference between the build and release? Build is a version of the software development team hands over to the testing team for the testing purpose, whereas the release is in a software of the testing team hands over to the customer. So like a build is to the particular, many builds will many builds will be there in a particular release. So basically build is in a kind of a version of the one of software that is hand over to the testing team to test that and also ask about that, like usability test case for the pen. Maybe some of the interviewers might ask the questions like just write some few test cases about the pen, or write a test case about the TV, or write the test case about the dustbin. So those kind of questions we might have get that, like, so usability test case for the pen. I can say that first we'll test the grip of pen, like verify if you are able to hold the pen comfortably or not. And the next one is of writing, whether you are able to write smoothly with that pen or not. Verify that the pen is not making any sound while writing, and verify the ink flow, like ink is continuously flowing or not, if any gaps is happening in while we writing that. And also the verify the quality of material used for the pen, like how the material quality which is used to build that particular pen. And also I think these are the general main interview questions we'll ask in during the questions which is related to the functional testing. And so I'll just talk about few more questions related to the agile methodology. How many type of frameworks we have in agile methodology? So we have a Scrum, lean software development, and feature driven development, FDD. Okay, so extreme programming and Kanban, Crystal methodology. These are the different type of frameworks which are available in Agile methodology. So before we get into the next, and just anyone has any questions? So I'll just try to answer your questions. So then I'll move to the next. Okay. If you do not have questions, okay. So, and we'll also get what are the different roles of a Scrum team? So generally, in Scrum team consists of the product owner and Scrum master and Scrum team. The Scrum team is it's including the both QA and the development team as well. Okay. And what is the product backlog and sprint backlog? Product backlog is maintained by the product owner. Sorry, I got a cough. I took a break. And product backlog is maintained by the product owner, which contains every feature and the requirement of the product. And sprint backlog can be treated as a subset of product backlog, which contain the features and the requirements related to that particular sprint only. And what is a refactoring? So generally, modification of the code without changing its functionality to improve the performance is called the refactoring. So what is the difference between the epic and user story and task? User stories define the actual business requirement generally created by the business owner, and the task to accomplish the business requirements, our development team creates the task. Epic, a group of related user stories, is called a epic. So there is tell me few about some of the agile quality strategies. Like you might have get this kind of question. So we need to talk, say the strategies about the refactoring the code, small feedback cycles, dynamic code analysis, and iteration. These are the methods which improves the agile quality. These are the things which improves a lot of quality in terms of the project and the product. So this which we can talk about that. What is the importance of why do we have a daily stand-up call? What we will discuss in the daily stand-up call. So daily stand-up call is which we will discuss about how much work has been completed and what are the plans to resolve the technical issues. If you have any technical issues, which we will raise and which we will discuss about those, and what steps need to be done to complete the project, like what are the pending things need to be completed, and what we are going to do in tomorrow, what we have achieved and what we are going to achieve then tomorrow. Those things which we will discuss during the stand-up call. So these are the questions we generally get it in the Agile methodology related question. And so first we'll go to the Tosca. And so generally, what are the components? So you might have get questions like, what are the components of the Tosca? How many different components are in the Tosca? Tosca generally have 4 components. One is the Tosca commander, Tosca executor, and the Tosca wizard and the test repository. So what are the advantages of the Tosca? So you might have get it is a scriptless automation tool. Okay, easy to, it's a very, we can quickly automate and we can quickly increase the automation penetration, and it is easy. Even it can be any non-technical person also can be easily used to automate the application using the Tosca automation tool, and you don't require any programming knowledge. And the execution of the script execution time also, it's a faster when you compare with the, it is not much faster in the sense like it's not it's almost same. Even I can say that almost same like any other automation tool. So it's the main advantage is in a scriptless automation tool. You don't need to learn any programming language. But here, if you want to develop any custom controls using the Tosca, we have to integrate that. Like we can do it in the C# language with the Visual Studio. So we can develop a code. That code can convert into the DLL file. That DLL which we can use, we can with the help of the DLL, we can associate the DLL with the Tosca tool, and there is we have a one function with use of that functions which we can call in the Tosca, and we can use that. So generally only custom controls designing, and then only we can use the Visual Studio. That is a very, very advanced level of concepts that in the Tosca. Anyone has any questions related to the Tosca so that I can answer? Even if you want any topic also, I am ready to give you the overview about that. You might have attended the training on the Tosca, right? So if you have any questions related to the Tosca also, you can ask. And you might also get a question related to that, like so I have an application. While scanning the application, okay, I'm not able to identify any control by the Tosca tool. So what are what are you going to do? Like, how do you manage that unidentified control using the Tosca tool? So like generally in Tosca provide a object recognition by it provides 4 mechanisms. Identify by the properties, identify by the anchor, identify by the image, identify by the index. So identify by the properties, like generally the developer developing an application use the different fields of the controls in a particular screen. So for each of the control, there is a set of properties which is defined or which is associated with that particular control. The Tosca will when you scan an application, scan application feature. So it help us to scan an application. It captures the controls which are there in a particular screen, and for it also captures the properties which are associated with that respective control. So when we capturing that properties, some of the controls, it doesn't have any unique properties to recognize that control. So in that time, the Tosca basically it used those properties to identify that control. And so while capturing, it captured the properties of the fields, right? So it captured that fields, and also it when we creating after a test case, when we execute, right, it compare the properties of that current, whatever the selected properties for the respective field, and it will also verify with the actual application. If both are matches, then tool will go and perform the operation in the respective field. So it identify by the properties, and if it is not able to you identify any particular control by the property by properties, so we have to say the answer like we can use identify by anchor mechanism. What is the identify by anchor mechanism is? It is which we are going to identify a particular unidentified control with the help of the any of the neighbor controls. There are some other fields which is very near to that particular field. We will make use of that particular field and its properties to recognize the unidentified control. Like we have to select a target control, like that control which is not able to identify, and we need to select a anchor control. So when you click on select option, it will enable you to select which control you want to use as an anchor control to identify that unidentified control. So we need to select that, and we need to make that as an anchor control. With the help of the identify by anchor mechanism, we can also recognize unidentified controls in a Tosca automation tool. And also we have another thing, identify by index. So even some of the there are many tables which is having the same similar properties, or many text boxes, or many controls in the same page. There are more than 2 or 3 same controls are there, but which doesn't have any unique properties. In that kind of a situation, so it is a difficulty to manage with the identify anchor, because for each of the controls we have to identify the anchor controls. Instead of that, we can make use of the identify index. So while capturing these controls, we will assign an indexing to each of the controls. With the help of that indexing, the Tosca tool will identify all these controls. And we also have another mechanism, identify by image. We can also capture the image of that particular control, and it will, with the help of that image, the tool will perform on the operations and identify and perform the operation with the respective controls. And we also have we'll also get a questions like, is it possible to integrate the Tosca with Jira or any other applications or Qtest? So yes, it is possible to integrate this Tosca, but direct integration is not possible. There is a third party tool that is a task trap integration. So that is a third party tool with help of that task trap third party integration tool, which we can integrate with Tosca with like Rally, Jira, and ELM, and many more like that. Even we can integrate the DevOps, like all the tools we can integrate with Tosca tool with that. And what is the test configuration parameters? Generally, we used to get a interview question like the test configuration parameter is in a kind of a parameterization technique. So we define a configuration parameters. So we use if we want to pass a common data or a common data or common credentials or the common what I can say, like if you take an example for the web services, we will have a lot of, for many services we'll have a endpoint URLs, we'll have a common web service headers across the different web services. So the common headers, web service headers, or a common endpoint URLs, and the event database host names and port numbers, and those details which we will add add as in a test configuration parameters, and we will pass that once we create a right, these configuration parameters will be available to the across the different test cases in a particular folder. So we can create a configuration parameters in the multiple levels, like we can create a project root level, and we can create a test case folder level. We can also create in a reasonable test step level, and we can also create in a particular test case level, or project folder level, root project folder level, or also we can also module based folder level, like different hierarchies where we can create a test configuration parameter. And we also get asked like what is the Doku snapper feature in a Tosca? Like how do you capture a screenshot in a Tosca? So how do you capture a screenshot? So we have a two mechanisms which we can capture a screenshot in a Tosca. Like we have a tbox take screenshot, that is a part of the standard module. With the help of that, we can it will take a particular screenshot of any application or a current desktop. So by using that module in our test case flow, wherever we want to take a screenshot, we can take that. We also have another feature called Doku Snapper. So we need to enable that snapper option, Doku Snapper option in the Tosca settings. Once we enable, so what it will do, right? Whenever we execute a test case, it will every time it will create a new Word file, and it will capture all the screenshot of that entire application. And what are the operations which you are trying to do on that application? It captured with the description in that particular Word file. Along with the, if you are performing or if you are trying to clicking any button, it will record, it will it will capture that particular step as well in that Word file. Like if you are setting any data, it will also set that data. If you are trying to click on a particular button, it will say that it's the Tosca is performed and click on a particular button. Like, so all the control names and all the what are the controls which you use in that test case, right? So it will provide a screenshot of everything, and along with the step descriptions. What are the operation which you are doing in the Tosca? That operation information will be it will write, and it will store into the particular Word file. Any questions related to the Tosca before we just get into the Selenium thing? Anyone has any questions till now?
I have one general question.
Yes, please.
Which I have experienced. As a tester, what is your daily activities? So how should I answer them in shortly?
So basically, then as a tester, so generally whenever there is like a sprint, right? So we will have a target to 2 weeks of time. So we will get a user stories. So based on the user stories, we'll write our test cases, right? So we'll write our test cases. We develop the test case, general, and within a 2 weeks of span time, we need to prepare a test data. And for our, we have to prepare our test cases. We need to develop the test cases, write and design the test cases, functional test cases. Once we complete the test cases, we need to perform the reviews, like peer reviews, and that lead kind of a review. Once we complete the test cases, we will get the sign off. We will drop an email to the corresponding, like from the business or from the perspective of the maybe on-site coordinator. It's kind of like we will perform the test case design, we will perform the test case reviews, and we will perform the execution. We will perform the defect reporting. We will participate in the defect triage calls, and we will also participate in the status meetings, like either it can be offshore meetings, either it can be we will have a connection with the development team to have a clarifications with the development, if you have any issue related to the clarifications, right? Any clarification which is required from the development team, we will connect with the development team. And if we are supporting as manual testing along with that automation, we do the execute the daily smoke test on every daily basis. So sometimes in some application we'll have a multiple builds in the same day. Whenever any build happens for all the different environments, so all the smoke tests will be executed on that whenever the after build every build happens, and we do the regression testing, and we will do the script development for the newly added regression suite. So these are the general activities which happen, which is doing by the tester. Any organization, these are the activities which we do. Or some we might also participate in some of the hirings, like generally when you join in an organization, so they might have expanding their teams, or they might have get the new requirement to they might have get a new project. So like, so as per your roles, they might have involve you into the hiring process. Like there might have a lot of process which happen in the as part of the hiring, team hiring, like, so they might have to conduct the testing, and they might ask you to prepare questions for the testing, like an assessment, like they might ask you to take the level 1, level 2, level 3 kind of discussions. So this, and also you might have get opportunity to provide a trainings within the other associate or upskilling the associates. Like, so these are the general activities which is done by the tester. You go anywhere, you go Amazon, you go Microsoft, you go anywhere. So these are the general activities which is run by the tester.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And feel free to ask your questions, so that it's not it's just kind of a discussion. Okay, so let's jump into the Selenium based questions of the Selenium.
Raghav, Hari here, Raghav. I just have one general question actually. So if someone
Yes, sir.
wants to come into the testing role into the IT industry,
Okay.
according to you, like what is the job split like with respect to manual testing and then automation testing? So if someone is purely into the manual testing, is there a scope for them to get into the testing roles currently within the market?
Yes, there are a lot of roles are there. So, see, there are many automation tools, but mostly widely used tools. In earlier, like a few years back, maybe 3 to 4 years back, the UFT was a majorly used automation tool in the market. So, and the current market is trending towards the Selenium, because it's a more the organizations are towards the Selenium, because it's a open source tool. And so, and also there are this Selenium, there are many openings are with the Selenium base. Like Selenium is also it is a flex enough to, you can use any programming language, like Selenium with Java, Selenium with Python, and Selenium with Ruby. So current market, it is more into the Selenium automation tool. There are a lot of opportunities with the Selenium automation tool. Anyone can learn the Selenium, and they can get the easily job on the Selenium. There are many openings are there with the Selenium opportunity. And the only little disadvantage here is like, so we are using the here, either you go with the Selenium, either you go with the Selenium Java, you go with the Selenium with the Python. You know that Java is a very vast language.
Correct.
So we just need to well versed with some of the core Java concepts. You don't need the entire Java here. We just need only core Java concepts, like and programming concepts,
inheritance, oops, yeah.
Oops, yeah, and also like just like arrays and threading concepts. those things.
Got you. Sure. Thank you, Raghu.
So anyone has any questions? If no questions, then we'll to go to the cell. So any kind of if you go to any kind of a company, so the first question you will get on selectors in a Selenium automation tool. What are the different locators? What are the different locators available in the Selenium WebDriver? So we have a class name, CSS selector, ID, link text, name, partial link text, tag name, XPath. These are the locators which are available in a Selenium driver, which we can make use of. Generally, mostly we use the ID or name or the XPath. These are the, and XPath will have a two XPath. One is absolute XPath, another relative XPath. In XPath, we use the only relative XPath. If you use absolute XPath, right, what happens? We need to specify with the from root to the child entire traverse. We need to specify. If any of the if any of the things is broken, like if any change in the developer is changed in any of the linkage, like any of the tag in between the from the root to the child, right? So it will not work. So if you use a relative, even if any change in the in between tags, so it will work. The event tool will identify and it will work as then we use a relative expert. So generally, we might also get the difference between the verify and assert methods in a Selenium, basically assertion and verify. So basically, if you use assertion condition, even if the test case is not met with the execution, if it will be aborted and it will execute the remaining execution will be also aborted. If you use the verify, so it will even if the test case a particular verification is failed and a particular test case execution is failed, so it will be it will not skip that entire execution. It will continue the remaining test case execution. And we'll also have a implicit explicit wait. What is the difference between the implicit wait and explicit wait? And so implicit wait is used to provide a default waiting time between each consecutive test steps. The implicit wait will be it is applied to the entire test groups, entire steps. It is not specific to the only particular test step. So it is you can call it implicit wait as in a WebDriver wait. You can call that. So even we use the WebDriver only, WebDriver wait. So when we write the programs, so explicit wait. So explicit waits are used to all the basically synchronization wait is nothing but a synchronization. Why we use a synchronization is like so the application and the tool will not respond at the same time, same with the same frequency and the same speed and same velocity. So what happens? Application might behave in differently, like different conditions. So where in which environment or like where what is your bandwidth network, and also the application there are many factors which impact that. So we need to follow the both tool speed and as well as the application speed to maintain a synchronize, like to maintain a sync with the application speed. So we use the synchronization. I'm sorry. There are two kinds of synchronization which we use: the static synchronization and dynamic synchronization. Static is nothing but we will set some like sleep method. In a Selenium, we use direct sleep method. So sleep is nothing but a static synchronization. Whatever the time frame which you have set, it won't bother whether the application responded or not. It won't bother. It will wait the specified time limit. After that time only, it will move to the next step and it will perform the execution. Whereas the dynamic synchronization, we are trying to verify a state of the controls or a property of any control. Like, so a particular button is whether the particular button is displayed or not. So we will put in we'll use the this explicit wait. I'm sorry. So this explicit we will put a condition of whether the particular button is displayed or particular button is enabled or a particular button is displayed in a particular page or not. And also particular button state, like whether it changed to enable to disable or disable to enable. So those kind of conditions which we can put, right? So because with what is the advantage of this dynamic synchronization? If the application responded in 2 seconds, even if you set that 20 or 30 seconds is the time threshold limit, if it is responded in 2 seconds, it will go to after 3rd second, it will go to the next step and will execute. But the static case, if you set the 20 seconds, 20 milliseconds, then it wait for the 20 milliseconds or 20 seconds. in that particular step, then it will move to the next step. So what are the different kind of exceptions which you have seen when you work with the Selenium WebDriver? We can see the element not visible exception. We can see the element not selectable exception. No such element exception. No such frame exception. I'm sorry. You need to go through some of the exceptions. Like, so generally when you perform the find element, driver dot find element of you give the locator information, right? So if the tool is not able to find that whatever the provided location tool, the Selenium is not able to find provided locator information, it throws the no such element exception. So generally you might have get an interview question like, what is the difference between the no such element exception and the element not found? So basically, if it is the tool is not able to identify a particular element in the DOM, so that it throws a no such element exception. But when you get the element not found, is like due to the timeout issues. So sometimes the page is not loaded completely, but the tool is moved to the perform and try to find out that locator in the DOM. So that time, so that it will it says that that particular no element found in the exception will return that. And we have a no such frame exception, no alert present exception, no such window exception, stale element reference exception, session not found exception, WebDriver exception, timeout exception, screenshot exception. These are different kind of exceptions which we observe and we see our day-to-day activities, like when we are working with the Selenium WebDriver. And we also you might also get a question like that difference between the quit and close method. The close is just it close the current instance of the browser, whereas in a quit method it will close the entire all the instances which is initiated by the WebDriver. So it will close all the browsers, all the instances. And we you will also get kind of a question like, so I have a text box. I want to set a value in a text box, but I don't want to use the send keys method. So generally we use the JavaScript executor. We will define the we will create an we will create an object for that JavaScript executor. JavaScript executor J is equal to JavaScript executor of WebDriver instance need to be passed that WebDriver, and again that JS dot execute script of. So we'll specify the document dot get element by ID of that particular locator name and dot value equal to the data which we want to pass. That this is the which we can manage without using the send keys method. And we will also get a question like a difference between the get and navigate methods in a Selenium WebDriver. So what is the get method? Get is a method used to navigate to the particular URL and wait for the page loads. There is a navigate method, it will just navigate to the particular URL, but it will not wait. It will not wait for that till the page get loaded. And also navigation, the navigation will have a others which like we can also do with the back and forward navigations, which we can do with this using the navigation thing. So, and also we might get a question like we have a drop down. The drop down contains the drop down items. So I want to verify all the expected drop downs are present or not there in the particular drop down. So we need to first we can use a select class. We need to use a select drop down equal to new drop down, new select drop down of that element description, whatever the element which we use the find element. I'm sorry. And once we find that, we'll get the list. All elements could drop down that get options. We have a get option method with helper, so which will give you all the drop down items. It will give you all items. It will give you as the list items. So we can iterate that loop and we can use the element that get text. It will give you the element description, each item description in that. And we might also get a question like how to find how many. I have a web page. I have a different frames in a page, but how to find how many number of frames are there in a particular page. So basically the frames have a tag, an image iframes. So we use the iframes tag to find how many number of tags are there, how many number of frames are there in a particular page. So web element equal to driver dot find element of by dot xpath of iframes dot size. It will return the how many number of frames are there in a particular page. And we will also we might also get a question like that. I have a web page in a web application. In my web application, there is a company name is displaying. Company name is there. In company name is highlighted with some background color. I want to automate and I want to validate that. How do you? What is the approach you use in using the Selenium WebDriver? So basically, we have a get CSS value is a method. First, we use the find element of we specify the by.xpath or by.id or by.name with the locator information. Then use the get CSS value of with we have a we can retrieve the attributes like font size, font color, and background color and font type. This kind of a properties which we can use to retrieve the properties values by using the get CSS value method. And also we get a question like what is the difference between the XPath and CSS selectors? We could traverse both using the XPath and CSS selector. We can traverse both forward, but whereas if you use the XPath, we can traverse both forward and backward. But using the CSS selectors only, it support a forward traverse. We cannot traverse backward using the CSS selectors. And we have a action class like so. Basically, in action class, we use a build method. So what is the significance of the build method in the action class? So when we're performing many actions on a particular, by using the action classes, we use the build method. So action classes that build that perform, we use that like the series of events which we specify and which we want to perform as an multiple operations using that action class. So by using the build method, this will compile all the actions together and it will try to perform the as a single action on the application side. And general questions like you might get a question like what is the difference between the error and exception? So the basic difference between the error and exception is error cannot be handled, but it can be handled, but can handle the exception. And error terminates the Java session itself, but the exception it will not terminate the Java session. So most of the errors are the system related, but exceptions are related to the user code. And stack overflow is an example for error, and null pointer exception is an example for the exception. Any questions before? Any questions? Anyone has any questions on the Selenium side?
No, Raghav, I think we can move on.
Okay. We might get a questions like how do you handle multiple windows? So we have a concept like a driver.get window handler method. With using that, it returns all the handle of the current page, and we also have get window handles. It returns all the set of handles of that particular page. So here it returns the HWND ID for each of the window. So based on that, we will use the respective window and we will perform the operation. And how can we highlight in a particular element in an application using Selenium WebDriver? We can use a driver.get and we use the find element. Then we use a JavaScript executor, and using the JavaScript executor, we use the argument list of 0.set attribute, and we set the style as an attribute value. For the style attribute, we use the background yellow border to be x.solid.red and comma element locator information like element web element whatever the number. Using the JavaScript executor, we can highlight an element in a web application. And what is a robot class? So robot class is in a Selenium and used to generate the native system input events for a test automation, where we can, using the robot class, we can easily upload a file. Robot class handles some mouse and keyboard functions, and pop-ups can be handled using easily with the robot class. And we will also get a question related how to like I have a web application in it. I have a web table. How to find how many number of rows are there in a particular table. So we can use a web element of target number of rows. We got driver dot find element by XPath locator information, and once we get that table, the web element, and then element dot find elements by the tag name of with the tr. So all the table rows which having the tag name as a tr. So we can find with the tag find element by the tag name with the tag of tr. So it returns the collection element list of elements. List of elements. We can use the list that size. It retains the how many number of rows are there in a particular table. Similarly, columns also. Columns will have a with the TD tag. So we can use that by tag name. Use the get element by the tag name. So we can use the TD, and it retains a collection, and the collection dot size it retains the number of columns. And also we will get a questions related to that Java related questions. And we might get they might ask like why Java is a platform independent language. When Java programs runs in a particular mission, it sent the Java compiler, the compiler which converts the code into the intermediate code called a bytecode. The bytecode is sent to the Java virtual machine, which reside in a system. When you install that, JVM will get installed, right? So basically, this bytecode can be run on any language and any platform, because so this bytecode will be executed on the JVM. So if you use a Windows, it will execute on a particular Windows JVM. If you install in the Linux, if you use the Linux, the JVM will be installed in that Linux. So the corresponding, that's why the Java is a platform independent language. Once the bytecode is there, the bytecode can be executed on anywhere. No, I'm sorry. What is a JRE and why it is required? So JRE stands for the Java Runtime Environment. So it comprises of the JVM, Java Virtual Machine, and Java Platform classes and supporting libraries. When you want to launch the Java application, so we must install the JRE. So then only it support that, because if you install JRE, it install the JVM in a particular mission. So then you will be able to the Java application will work on that mission. And we will also get a question like, what is the difference between the local variable and instance variable? And a local variable is a variable we declare inside the method. A method will often store its temporary state in a local variable. An instance variable is a variable that is declared out inside the class but outside the method. That is a difference. Like local variable is a variable that we declare inside the method, and the instance variable is the variable that is declared inside the class but outside the method. So, and we'll also get a questions like what is a getter and setter method? In a method that is used to retrieve and get the value of a variable or return a value of a private number variable is called a getter method, and a method that is used to updating or the setting a value of a variable is used to call it the setter method. We use that. And so okay, what are the uses of inheritance kind of person? Like we can reuse the code using the inheritance. We can increase the features of the class or method by overriding. Inheritance is used to use the existing features of the class, and it is used to achieve the runtime polymorphism, like method overloading and method overriding. So we'll also we'll get a question like, is it possible to use this and super both the keywords in the same constructor? So because it is not possible, because these are the keywords which need to be mentioned in the first line in that constructor, like because Java does not allow using both super and this together in the same constructor. As per the Java specification, and the super, this must be the first statement in the constructor. That's right. And I'm sorry. And so that's why it will not allow you to use both the keywords in the same constructor. And generally we'll get a questions like, what is a polymorphism, what is a inheritance, what is a method overriding and method overloading. And you will also get a question like, what are the OOPS concepts which you have used in your framework. So these are the kind of questions you will we will get during the Selenium interviews. And we will also get a questions like SQL related. Like first, let's have some of the programs which they might ask in during your interviews, like write a Java program for the Fibonacci series, write a Java program for reverse testing without using the reverse function, built-in function, and Java write a program for the palindrome number, and count the number of words in a string, and how to remove it. I have an array, a set of elements which are there in array. I want to find a duplicate elements in array and remove from the array. Those kind of things. Generally, I have a string which contains the numeric values. I want to remove all the numeric values from a string. So these kind of questions we will get in during interviews. And I have a this kind of questions generally we will get. And also programs like it's a kind of generic string manipulations, arrays. So the questions related, you just practice some of the programs like a palindrome, and how to remove a numbers, how to remove duplicate numbers from an array, and sorting related, like comparing in an array. I want to sort the data into the elements of that. I want to sort data into the array elements. And and also some of the questions like, I have a table. I have a table in my application. That table contains one of the column as a country name. Okay, so the country name is it contains all the country names, in that particular table in a different row. So when I do the double click on header of the table, so it gets sorted into the ascending and descending order. So how can we? I want to automate the sorting functionality to make sure that whether sorting is working or not. So like we have a collection objects, like using the collection objects, we can retrieve the elements and we can store it to the collections, and we have a default method of collection object like dot sort method. It support it default sort into the ascending order. So we can click on the application and it will get sort in the ascending order. We can also store that elements in the ascending in a collection. So we will use the sort method, so that will be sorted into that, and we will read the again elements from the table and we'll compare each row by row. So if both are matches, then we can say that like that is we can expect it as that, and it is working as expected, that sorting functionality. So these kind of questions we'll get, and also we'll get a questions like I have a table, employee table. I'm having the employee name and employee ID, and employee selection is there. In the employee selection, we'll have a check boxes. So I want to select all the employees whose salary falls between the 40 to 50K between. So in that kind of things, we just need to iterate the loop, like find the how many number of rows are there. We have to iterate the loop, and we need to get the employee name and employee salary, and we need to put the condition if the salary falls between the if you have to specify retrieved value salary is greater than less than 50,000 and greater than 40,000. So we should it should be enter into that loop, and it should be able to we need to traverse to that particular element of that checkbox in a particular row. We can use that iterator of that. We can put that condition like a particular index which we can pass for that checkbox, and we can perform the click operation on that particular checkbox. Based on the value, if it matches with the value, then it will go and perform the selecting of that particular checkboxes using the Selenium Webdriver. So generally, these are the questions, these kind of questions which the interviewer might ask during the interviews. So I'm done with that session. So anyone has any questions so that we can discuss that. And also tell me whether it is useful for you, like it is useful or not. Like, so the things which I have discussed. So you learn any new concept or you learn any new, you add any new interview question, and also how to answer the questions. Just feel free to provide your feedback.
Great, thanks, Raghav. So do we have any further questions for Raghav for today? I will go with names Jay Chitra, Joshna, Priyanka, and Vasudha.
I hope it helped you to understand the interview process and what are the general questions which you might get during interviews. I'm sure whatever we discussed, so those questions you might see any of interviews. These are the questions. As I have more than 10 years of experience in the interviewing process, like I have interviewed many of, like you say that I can say that I have interviewed more than 500 or 600 people in both the previous and current arc. Whatever I discussed, the questions which I used to ask during interviews, that's the questions which I discussed. Even I used to participate many of the interviews. So like sometimes I was just passive, like listener to join, like sometimes the new panels introduced into the teams, right? So that time, so they used to ask the question, but I was a passive listener. So even that time also I had a lot of questions, right? So those questions also I've just covered as part of this 2 session. So because generally in interviews will happen in the multiple levels, the in level 1, level 2, and the level 3, and sometimes level 4 as well. So sometimes we'll have it in the again project manager round. So those kind of different kind of levels. So I have participated in most of the thing, all the levels. I have participated in level 1, level 2, and level 3 also. Even I have participated in the like as you know, right, like a kind of a vendors, and so even we, as in a client, I was taken as a client interviews kind of things. So like so as the experience with the different kind of, so I've tried to just give the overview about how the interview process and what are the kind of different questions which might ask during the session. I hope it helped you to understand that. Thank you.
Sure, definitely. Thank you, Raghav. Thanks for your time today. And I request the participants, if you have any further questions, queries, or additional information, do feel free to reach out to me. Thank you, Raghav, and we appreciate your support over here. I wish everyone a happy weekend.
Yeah.